I'm talking to you. This is Goddess of Science Anatomy, and I'm Mrs. Bolvin. Today we're going to talk about the bones of the lower limb, which is part 8 of the skeletal system series. Okay, so we got to start with where the legs are attached, and that's the pelvis. Pelvis is made of two coxa, and which is really the pelvic girdle, the sacrum, and the coccyx. So the coxa is actually made up of 3 different bones that have all been fused together. And then you have the sacrum and the coccyx that kind of hold the thing together in the back. So each coxa is made up of 3 bones that meet in something called the acetabulum. The acetabulum is kind of a bowl-shaped structure on the external side, the outward side of the pelvis, and that's where the head of the femur fits in there. The ilium is by far the largest of the 3 bones. It's right here. Kind of looks like an elephant ear to me. On the ilium, there are several markings. The greater sciatic notch is right here. The greater sciatic notch is the location that the sciatic nerve runs down from the spinal cord down each of your legs. And sometimes if there's some inflammation around that nerve, you'll have like incredibly intense pain. And that nerve goes right down through that notch. You have the iliac crest on the lateral side of each of the ilium. There's a little crest right there at the top. You can kind of feel that crest if you put your hands kind of on your hips and you feel like kind of toward the middle, you can actually feel that little crest a little bit. It's the ridge on top of the ilium. Excuse me. The ischium is the part of your pelvis that you actually sit on. Okay, so when you sit, and probably at some point maybe you've had a small child that sat on your lap, and because children tend not to be as muscular or have as much fat as adults, sometimes it feels like really their butts are really bony, and it hurts after a while that they're sitting on you because the ischium is like pushing into you. So the ischium is the part that you sit on, and there are some parts of the ischium. You have the ischial spine, which is right there. You have the ischial ramus, which is down here. Remember, a ramus is a bar-like bar of bone. Inside the ischial ramus, in the inside here, between the ischium and the pubis, that's actually the obturator foramen. That's actually the largest foramen in the body. Remember when we talked about the foramen magnum, we said that it wasn't actually the largest foramen in the body, but this one actually is the obturator foramen. The pubis is the tiny bone or tiny compared to the other 3, bone that sits in front. It's the smallest of the 3, and it's joined in front by a piece of cartilage called the pubic symphysis. That cartilage is really interesting because when a woman is getting ready to give birth, that cartilage kind of turns from a mostly solid thing to pretty much like jelly, so that the baby's head can move down through the woman's pelvis and find the exit. The pubis in the front forms a pubic arch. If it has a smaller angle, then it's going to be a male pelvis. If it has a larger angle, then it's going to be a female pelvis. So femur is the thigh bone. It's a big, huge bone. Lots of different parts to the femur. The top is the head. That's the part that fits into the acetabulum on the proximal end of the bone. It articulates with the acetabulum of the pelvis. The neck, just like underneath your head is your neck, underneath the head of the femur is the neck of the femur. And then you have this greater trochanter, which is kind of off to the side. It's lateral to the head. Um, Big kind of bulky thing. So it's on a little bit on the proximal end of the femur. The lesser trochanter kind of looks like a bunion, kind of down below on the same side as the femur. It's the bump under the femur. And that's on the medial side of the bone. More stuff about the femur. We have some condyles going on here at the bottom. There's these rounded projections on the bottom of the bone. The lateral condyle, and the condyles are only visible from the posterior view of the femur. So the lateral one is going to be on the side that's outside of the body, and the medial one is going to be in the middle. So lateral condyle is the outside of the knee. Medial condyle is, both of them are posterior, and their medial condyle is on the inside. Oh my gosh. Moving to the lower leg, we have the tibia, which is the bigger of the two bones, and it's tall like a T. Okay, so it kind of looks like a T here. When in anatomical position, it's medial, so the two tibias touch. If you put your feet together, your ankles are actually, the inside of your ankles is actually this part of the tibia, the medial malleolus. So the tibias are always on the inside or the medial part of your lower legs. The rounded part up at the top has to be facing front. And when you pick up the tibia, it will be kind of evident that that's the way it has to go. But if you remember that this medial malleolus thing here looks kind of like an overgrown styloid process, if you remember that that has to be in the middle, it's pretty easy to figure out if it's a right or a left tib. So on the front here, we have this kind of roughened part, a little bunch on the front. It's called the tibial tuberosity, and it's close to the head of the tibia. You also have an anterior crest, and you can kind of think about this like as a crest of a wave. It kind of, the front of the tibia kind of curves over a little bit, and then it falls off straight. So there's like kind of a line or a crest there at the very big front of the tibia. The medial malleolus, we already talked about, that forms the inside part of your ankle, the bony part of your ankle. And then we have the fibula. Now, here's the deal. A lot of times people mix up tibia and fibula. Sometimes they say tibula, sometimes they say fibia. Neither one of those are bones. It's tibia and fibula. The fibula is a smaller bone, but it has the longer name. Go figure. For me, the fib is probably the hardest bone to figure out right and left with. So it's a small bone in the lower leg. It's on the lateral side of your lower leg. So in anatomical position, it would be on the outside of your lower calf. And there's one end that kind of looks like something you'd spread peanut butter with. And then the other end is kind of a pyramid, or kind of a very badly built pyramid, but a pyramid kind of shape. That pyramid kind of shape is actually the proximal part. So the head is the proximal part up here. The pyramid shaped part is the head. And then if you had a medial malleolus on the tib, you have a lateral malleolus on the fib. So that's the outside of your ankle. So that fib comes down the side of your leg and then hangs down a little bit lower than the tib, and that's what forms your outer ankle. So when you're looking at the fibula, the flat part of the lateral malleolus has to face medially, and sometimes that's a little difficult to figure out. Hopefully when you're in class, we'll spend some time working on that. You can ask me about that when you get to class. Foot, easy peasy, 3 types of bones, very similar to what you saw in the hand, only they're named slightly differently. The tarsals are the bones here from here back, all the way back to your heel. Those are all tarsal bones. They're the ones that articulate with the tib and the fib. A couple of them have actual names. They all have names, but you only have to remember two of them. The talus is the top tarsal. See the alliteration there? And that's the one that's in contact with the tib and the fib. So the first one is called the talus. And that is the one that carries the weight of the body. The calcaneus kind of looks like a weird shaped rock back here, and I always think of calcaneus might sound like igneous or something like that, so that's how I remember that one. So the calcaneus is going to be your heel. Metatarsals form the arch of your foot, and then you have phalanges that make up the toes, and this view of the foot is actually a medial view. So you're looking at the big toe here. Notice, just like the thumb, there are only two phalanges in the big toe. There are going to be three in all the other toes. So there's proximal, middle, and distal. In the other four toes besides the big toe, it only has two. It has proximal and distal, just like your thumb does. So we got another view. This is a top view of the foot. You can see the calcaneus bone sticking out here, the talus bone, all the other tarsals right here. We have the metatarsals, and then we have phalanges, proximal, middle, and distal, except for the big toe, which only has a proximal and distal phalange. Okay, well, that's it for this time. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.